For USCFootball.com, I'm Keely Eure here with Dan Weber for instant analysis of USC's Tuesday practice of Stanford week. Now the Trojans came out in full pads today. Clay Helton said that they did some good tackling, some good practice today. He said both Matt Fink and Kedon Slovis had an awesome day today as quarterbacks. But we got to talk a lot about the quarterbacks. There's a lot of media today just because there's a lot of fanfare now that USC has a different starting quarterback.
Yeah, when you walk up and there are 4 TV trucks and I think there were close to 30 media, and that's a lot. I mean, that looked like the day Sark returned to practice. There were that, and there was a truck from the Reign, R-E-I-G-N, energy drink that's Graham Harrell's favorite energy drink, and he endorsed it and all that. And they had a big pickup truck here and a cooler full of. They were giving it out to media and coaches and students, and so it was kind of a big day on the sidewalk outside of Goo Gate.
Yeah, and it was kind of a lot of fanfare and a quick presser for Clay Helton just because he had to go to the Trojans Live radio event. So it was a quick in and out for Clay Helton. But what we did get to talk to him about was Saturday's game plan once JT came out of the game. And he did admit that the game plan did change once Kedon came in. They ran the ball more than they probably would have if it was JT still in there. But when asked what's going to be the game plan for Stanford, he said the playbook's wide open for Kedon Slovis. Dan, what do you take away from that in the sense that how prepared is Kedon if he only got a limited playbook on Saturday?
Yeah, I think, obviously that's what you do is second guess coaches, true. And coaches are, I probably would have said, this is how we play well. For example, the 41-yard pass play that Kedon completed to Tyler Vaughns was on when they were going really fast. They got a big run out of Vi Malapai on the play before, ran to the ball and threw the pass. And Kedon said, that really works. I mean, I like that. He didn't get to do much of that. He didn't really get to do much. And that's where I think people came away kind of feeling like, man, that looked like last year's offense a little bit. Throw deep balls, and one of them you get a really good catch, and the other one you get it picked off. And so I would have probably liked to see Kedon get a chance to just be Kedon. And if this is how you're going to play against Stanford and the rest of the season, you might as well start the second half of the Fresno State game. And if you can't execute it against Fresno State, I mean, USC, the danger was, Clay said, we had 3-score advantage. I'm not sure exactly where the 3-score advantage was, but they had a couple of score advantage, which last year they had four double-digit leads that they blew and lost. So that might be an indicator of maybe you just keep playing the way you got the lead. Just keep playing. That would be me. And so as a result is. They only threw the ball to 6 receivers. And last year, most games, they had more than 6 guys catch the pass. And they had a lot of kids that, you thought are going to be ready and going to be in the game that basically didn't get any experience at all. So not sure, from that standpoint, it's not ever going to be easy to lose your starting quarterback, returning starting quarterback in the first half of any opener for the next season. But you probably would have liked to have seen him get a little bit more of real football for Kedon, the way USC is going to play football.
Yeah, and I got to ask Graham Harrell specifically about USC's wide receiver rotation on Saturday, and he kind of paused and laughed after I asked that, and he said, well, we kind of have to do a better job as a staff about that, just because we let the kids police themselves when they got tired, and they didn't really get tired in the game. He called them workhorses, the wide receivers, but he said he expected them to get more tired, but the game kind of slowed down with the referees. He said we pushed them so fast in practice that it didn't really match what they were doing in the game. So that was a different kind of kink that they had just because the refs kind of didn't match the tempo that they do in practice.
Yeah, and then it went from 50 plays in the first half to 28 in the second. So It wasn't even a big high play count as it turned out. So that's not the way they've prepared to play, not the way they practiced to play, and probably can't be the way they end up playing. If you're going to, this is who we are, this is how we do things, you don't worry about, Fresno State's doing this or doing that. You just do what you do. I mean, how many times do we have USC people tell us, we're going to do what we do, and we don't care.
Yeah.
And we did not see that.
Yeah. As Dan alluded to, we actually got to talk to Keaton Slovis today, and I thought one of the noteworthy things he said was that his confidence was affected when he was named the backup quarterback. He expected to win the job, and so it's an interesting mindset, and one you want now that he's the starting quarterback, that competitive fire in him.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that. I mean, because he was getting all these, from back home, everybody said, way to go, good job, and he's like really bummed out because I think I should have, I should have won that job. It gives you a little bit of insight into who he is, and he gave us another little bit of insight that we hadn't known about, that he played for his dad, who was his basketball coach, and he said he kind of went crazy on the sideline, so I kind of developed this calm persona to sort of balance things out. Now that probably ought to give you some indication of he's a little bit of a different sort of a kid. How many, still 18 years old and figuring out how he can act to balance out his dad in a basketball game. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Today's also a special teams day, which means we got to talk to John Baxter. We had a couple questions for him. You specifically got to talk to him, Dan. First off, Ben Griffiths. We had sang his praises on Instant Analysis, so much so that I got tweets during the game of like, what's happening with Ben Griffiths? But according to John Baxter, Griffiths executed the game plan, and that's what they wanted out of him, out of at least the Fresno State game.
Let's say he got coached down he got coached basically into last year's punter. And Baxter wanted him kicking that drop punt, which we had thought was going to be the punt that you kick from midfield inside the 20 for sure. You never kick it into the end zone, and you hope it's say inside the 10. And it's the real high. You get good coverage. You get the ability to down it. And he had opportunities to flip the field where he could have just kicked it as hard and as far as he wanted, and they didn't let him. And so I said, you guys sandbagging Stanford maybe? He said he executed the game plan, and he did it really well. So make of that what you will, but that's their story. My guess is, I know he did say, well, it's his first game and all that, but I would have been shocked if that was a result. He would have been maybe one of the last guys that you would have tagged with, explainer that they had for a lot of things that happened. First game jitters.
Yeah.
I didn't see that happening with Ben Griffith. So it wouldn't be the first time that Baxter wants you to kick it to a particular location at a distance that they can cover. There you go. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's his story, and they're sticking to it.
Mm-hmm. We also tried to make sense of the little mishap that happened on the kickoff return that Velus Jones had, the 61-yard return that got called back because of 2 number 7s. What was Baxter's explanation for that problem?
Well, this is a good explanation, and I tend to absolutely believe it. Basically, a game-time decision, Isaac Taylor Stewart, who was on all the cover teams, is named the starting corner. So now you have to replace him on all those teams. So in putting those teams together, Baxter said, I just put players. He said, I know them as players. I know them as people. I don't know them as numbers. He said he had no thought and no idea that by putting Chase Williams in there with Stephen Carr, he was putting 2 number 7s. And then he talked to him afterwards, and Chase Williams said, yeah, I know I've got number 7 and he's got number 7. I think he had, in the team meeting, he had him say, how many guys have duplicate numbers? And there like 30 guys stand up. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's really a lot. I mean, we didn't hear, every time you put a different number, a slip-on jersey over one of those guys on a special teams, the referee has to announce that. And that had happened several times during the game, always for USC. It didn't happen at all for Fresno. They didn't have any duplicate numbers. I mean, I think I just told John, I said, that's kind of like, that's walking that high wire without an out of net when you're, putting guys in. But he said that didn't even occur to him. When he put Chase Williams in, he said, and then he said to Chase, did you know Stephen's got number 7 and you got number? He said, yeah, I did. That's probably where but if you don't even think that's an issue, you don't have that discussion where you don't say, Chase, you know Steven's going to be out there. If you look and he's got 7 and you got 7, you can't go out there. You have to get one of the slip-on jerseys. It's up to you. So, but they had at least 3 other teams that Isaac Taylor Stewart was on, cover teams, that they decided he can't be on those teams because he's starting. But you know, they had their kickoff return team, for example, set for the last 2 weeks until this happened on Friday. So, and they did a great job blocking kickoffs, to say the least. I mean, but Baxter said that one's on him. Never happened before. Hadn't thought about it, and you can't blame anybody else but him.
Yeah, it's interesting for sure. As far as injury updates go, we got a little bit of clarity. Andrew Voorhees was not dressed out today. He has a foot sprain, I believe. Was that what it was?
He said it was a foot injury, but he didn't say. He said we'll know more later. I don't think he got into exactly what, the detail of the foot injury.
Yeah, and then I got to talk to Drew Richmond today, actually for the first time this whole camp since he's transferred to USC. He said that he got dehydrated during the game. He said it was a one-time thing, kind of a fluke thing, and as a precaution they sat him down and made sure he was hydrating. But he said he'll be good to go for Saturday.
This is amazing. This is a kid from Memphis.
Yeah, I know.
Right on the Mississippi River next to Arkansas, and he got dehydrated in Los Angeles. Wow.
Yeah, no humidity, so interesting. And then Kyle Ford, the wide receiver, got cleared to practice today. But other than that, we don't have a full picture anymore just because we're out of practice. We did see that Jacob Lichtenstein is still out, Abdul Malik McClain is still out, and 34 is Elijah Winston is still out.
Devin Williams, he evidently hasn't really been practicing all of last week, didn't play. He's now back and practicing, and he's okay. We don't know what he wasn't okay with, but I mean that's the problem. You can see him do calisthenics, and if they've got their pads on, you're not aware if they practice or don't practice. So apparently he wasn't practicing last week, didn't play. He is practicing now.
Yeah, and that's not something that Clay directly said. We asked about Devin Williams because we heard that he wasn't practicing, and we didn't see him in Saturday's game, but Clay said that he was practicing today, so interesting development there. But Dan, as I mentioned at the top of this video, Clay said that it was a good practice day today, but as we mentioned, we can't see practice anymore. And we've mentioned before, the Devil's Advocate, they've been saying all these good things about what they're doing in these closed practices, but then seeing what happened on Saturday, do you necessarily take their word now for what they're practicing? How do you evaluate these practices given what we saw as far as tackling, technique, and whatnot on Saturday?
I think we'll know a little bit more because we're going to get the defense tomorrow, and we're really going to talk to we're going to do a lot of, did you tackle yesterday? Are you tackling in shoulder pads when you've been pretty physical? What's the plan to be able to avoid a 2-week period where you don't do tackling, and then you go into the game and you can't tackle the quarterback? And I think the thing we got to ask is, it almost seemed from Clay that just because the quarterback was the guy they were missing, that wasn't like really missing tackles. But if he's your leading ball carrier, and if he's the guy that extends all the drives, and it looks like you may have him for a sack, which basically ends almost any drive. If you get a sack, the chances of that team keeping the ball and extending the drive are very slim.
Yeah.
So all of those opportunities, Clay said we had 8 or 9 opportunities and they got 3. So isn't maybe it more? I mean, it was like, well, it's not quite the same thing if you're missing the quarterback. It's almost more important, it seems like to me.
Yeah.
So how do you do that? Because there's nobody where you actually, when you go 11 on 11, you actually tackle the quarterback. So it's not that it's an easy thing to do, but you probably got to figure out a way to do that as the season moves on, and so that you stay on top of your tackling.
Yeah.
Because they've got an athletic defense that can run to the ball, but guys weren't breaking down. They weren't getting exactly the right angles, and they were getting run by, and that can't happen.
Yeah. Alrighty, any final thoughts, Dan, before we wrap it up on a Tuesday practice?
No, I just, it's amazing to me how Keaton, how confident he is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, and this is the time, and he did know about what the Bachmeyer kid from Murrieta Valley, the true freshman at Boise that led them to an upset win from 18 points down at Florida State, or the next kid who's a true freshman who threw the touchdown pass to win for Auburn, and he was all over that.
Yeah.
His coach didn't know anything about those guys. Graham was like, who are they? But Keaton knew all about those two guys. So he is, his confidence is interesting. That's going to be, he's unusual that way, to be that confident, that young.
Yeah, and I think that's something that you would want if you're in this position as a USC fan. You want the next guy up to have that confidence no matter what the age or experience. But that's going to wrap it up for Tuesday's practice. For Dan Weber, I'm Keely Eure. For more, check out uscfootball.com.